Hey, this is Jeff Dornik, founder of the GK Podcast Network. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope that you'll subscribe to this channel and give us a 5-star review. You have no idea how much this helps us. Also, if you'd like to watch the full version of the show, you can join our plugged-in membership. For only $10 a month, you'll get access to the live stream and full video versions of our shows, the recordings from the Destroy Social Justice Conference, online access to our book Social Injustice, our weekly devotional, 30% off in the GK store, and so much more. Please visit gatekeepersonline.com/plugged-in for more information and to sign up. Thank you for your support. Hey, this is Jeff Dornik, co-founder of the American Conservative Movement. We are an organization seeking to unify conservatives across this great country to defend our constitutional rights that are being systematically stripped away by our authoritarian government. Please visit AmericanConservativeMovement.com and join the thousands of conservatives across this country who have signed up for our email list. Let's take back our country.
We must never forget that no government schemes are going to perfect man. We know that living in this world means dealing with what philosophers would call the phenomenology of evil, or as theologians would put it, the doctrine of sin. There is sin and evil in the world, and we're enjoined by Scripture and the Lord Jesus to oppose it with all our might.
Coming to you from the epicenter of the Constitution ablaze, this is the America Held Hostage podcast, America's economy on life support. Now here's your host, John Hinton.
Welcome, everyone, to the Friday weekly roundtable of the America Held Hostage podcast. We're glad to have you with us today on Friday. Just want to let you know, you can log on to the gatekeepersonline.com, gatekeepersonline.com. That is the digital hub of the GK Podcast Network. There you're going to be able to find our plugged-in membership, as you heard earlier from our founder, Jeff Dornik, in his ad that ran before we started. You can also find us on iTunes. Just plug in GK Podcast Network and the list of all the podcasts that we offer will come up for you. Find our podcast, America Held Hostage, like and subscribe, leave us a 5-star review so that our digital overlords can help us spread the message to the masses far and wide of a constitutional, Christian, and conservative worldview. And when you're there, leave us a review as well. We'd greatly appreciate it. So, we want to get started in the rundown today, bringing on JJ Knight, Uncle FreightTrain, and GK Podcast founder and former America Held Hostage co-host and now contributor, Jeff Dornik. JJ, good to see you.
Hey.
Uncle FreightTrain, good to see you.
You too, Johnny.
And Jeff, as always, it's good to be in the saddle again.
Exactly. It's always good to be back.
So, we've got the digital stack of stuff for Friday. Obviously, the big news that we've been covering Wednesday, Thursday, and now Friday that we'll get to is the impending doom that's starting to come out of ObamaGate. It looks like the cockroaches are scattering in D.C. as everyone's starting to rat out themselves. I say that.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.
Wickedness in the high places needs to be exposed. We will post the Thursday video. If you haven't heard that, the audio version is on iTunes. We had some technical difficulties with some gremlins as they're trying to throttle us, the deep state. We've made impact. That's a good thing. But they're trying to throttle us. We will get that worked out and get the Thursday video up on YouTube. But me and Pastor Sam Jones did a 78-minute deep dive of everything that goes into what's been happening this week, especially the Michael Flynn ObamaGate scandal. We're going to touch on that in just a little bit, but you can find that. We'll get that straightened out for you. But the first story in the Friday stack of stuff. The Michigan barber that defied the governess Gretchen Whitmer. Thank you, JJ, for calling her that. I appreciate it. The governess, the political whoredom that I call the political Jezebel, Gretchen Whitmer, saying that he would keep his shop open until Jesus comes. The Hill is reporting that Michigan has suspended his barber's license, and that now if he defies the order, he's going to be fined $1,000 a day every day that he defies that order. Gentlemen, I think that this is absolutely ridiculous. It is wickedness run amok. It is pagan progressivism at the highest order. But Jeff, I want to start with you, because when I sent you this, you wanted to make the argument that taking away this man's business was a violation of this barber's Fourth Amendment rights. Your thought first.
Yeah, well, I think for me, a lot of this comes down to, they're not giving this guy due process, number one. Number two, last I checked, it's the legislative branch that passes laws, not the executive branch. So right now what we're having a governor, the executive branch, making the law, then doling out punishment for the law, and then threatening a private business to not go through due process. This is a very, very serious violation of the Constitution. So I'm looking at the amendments, right? There's Amendment number 5, and it says that nor shall any person be subject for the same offense be put twice in jeopardy in life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. And then this is where we get nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Now, I believe that the argument can and should be made that a private business that you are the sole owner of is your property. Thus, if you're taking that away, you're taking that away with due process. It's not like he went before a trial. It's not like he was, went before a jury of his peers or anything along those lines. Like, this was essentially somebody who views herself as a dictator, creating laws and then enforcing them herself. This is not the American way. This is not constitutional at all.
I would completely agree. I think that this is absolutely appalling. Uncle Freight Train, your thoughts on the governess going, as we've said before, full-blown pagan panic porn when it comes to she is just drunk with power.
John, you just stole my thunder there, because that's exactly where I was going. Yes, she is drunk with power. And then as she's getting more drunk as day goes by, she's vomiting on the Constitution. It's ridiculous. And again, sorry I can't come up with better words, people, because you've seen me in multiple podcasts. This type of draconian takeover without due process, as Jeff mentioned, I've never seen it in my born days, so I don't even know how to comment on it. Then it is almost surreal what we're living in right now. And I wanted to piggyback a little bit on what Jeff had to say too. Constitutionally, you made the argument in Amendment 5. You were talking about his property being his business. How about his liberty? Period. That's a slam dunk in the court, out the court, and he's in business. Yeah, this is going to, if they do impose these draconian means on this man, you'll see it go as high as it possibly can go. I'm sure it would go to the Supreme Court.
Gentlemen, I want to go one step further, because before the 1870s, the Declaration of Independence was used as basis for laws before the Supreme Court. It was seen as the country's founding document. Well, the Declaration of Independence, which, by the way, if we're going to appeal to the laws of nature and nature's God, and we're going to appeal to the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, then I said this to JJ. I'm going to start calling myself a declarationist, not a constitutionalist. Let's go back to the foundation of what the Constitution actually came out of. So I would say this is a violation of his endowed creatorial rights from the laws of nature and nature's God when it comes to liberty and the pursuit of happiness, which piggybacks on both FreightTrain and Jeff's points. So I'm going to go to JJ. JJ, your thoughts on what the governess is doing to punish a 77-year-old man who just wants to do his job.
Well, no pressure here. The bottom line is, we have rights in this country, and you're supposed to uphold those rights. And this gentleman, this is his livelihood. A $1,200 stimulus check is not going to help him. I'm hoping that he was wise with his money and he has some stuff put aside or whatever. But if he chooses to cut hair and people choose to come in to get their hair cut, let's not forget this, people are coming to get their hair cut. It's an important point. And then you have no business interfering in that. Now, if suddenly, he gets sick or whatever, well, then that's on him and those that came in and out of there, and contact tracing should occur at that point, fine. But I'm going to go even further back, and I'm going to say, look, I'm only going to obey whatever government, whatever constitution or not, as long as you're praising good and punishing evil. As soon as you stop doing that, my Lord's bigger than your piece of paper.
Preach.
Amen.
That is absolutely outstanding analysis, JJ. I would absolutely agree with that. I think that what she's doing is it's draconian, it's reprehensible, it's appalling, it's unconstitutional. Whatever adjective that you can use to describe the evil that is happening to this man needs to be screamed from the mountaintops. And the fact that you're not hearing a peep from any of the duly elected representatives in Michigan stand up for this man, that says a lot. That says a lot about the fact that it's about the grift. They just want to pick up a paycheck. And at this point, we'll get to a story later about North Carolina Senator Richard Burr, who oversaw the Senate Intelligence Committee, but then deferred this to Russian collusion panic porn peddler Mark Warner of Virginia. Remember this? He got found out he's been suspected of insider trading because 3 weeks before the stock market tanked, he was briefed on what could happen to the economy due to coronavirus in mid-February, and then he sold off several million in stocks. He just had to resign from the Intelligence Committee. But that was after the FBI raided his house in D.C. last night and confiscated his phone. And I think that if heads are going to roll over the Obamacare, not the Obamacare, the ObamaGate debacle, then what happened with, I think it was the Georgia senator who did insider trading, and then this, I think we need to pursue everything. And if it's mutually assured destruction, then that means that they can't do anything against us, and they can leave us the heck alone. Uncle FreightTrain, your thoughts on the fact that Richard Burr is being investigated for insider trading. In your thoughts, what would you do to this man besides tar and feathering?
Can he be prosecuted for that, using that knowledge to trade unfairly in the stock market? I believe that he can. So just another one of
It's another one of the Justice Department's targets now to go after once they go through the whole litany from Obama down the line in the swamp. He's
Jeff,
just going to be another casualty, probably.
Now, let me follow up with you, Uncle Freight Train, before I go to Jeff. Do you think that that's actually going to occur? Is anybody going to be held accountable? Because at this point, I'm not sure that that's going to be the case.
Really? Well, John, I would strongly disagree with that with that thought process, because I can tell you what.
It's not that I don't want it to occur. Let me interject.
Oh,
not that I don't want it to occur. I'm just afraid that these people don't want to expose themselves or the other side, because everybody knows where the bodies are buried. So if you burn me, I'm going to burn you. Well, I want to still pick up a paycheck, so I'll just look the other way. But you think that this is going to be a house of cards that burns down. I want to know why.
Well, you have a valid point there, John, as well, and I can it can go either way, but I'm putting my cards on the fact that when Trump appointed Barr, he wasn't fooling around. This man is tenacious, and he's got a bulldog working for him with his lead investigator, John Durham. No. And I've said it many times, and I will say it again so people truly understand what I'm saying. When the indictments come and the heads roll, it will be beyond your wildest imagination. It will be epic like nothing else. The only thing it would be more monumental is the second coming of Christ. Let's hope that's soon as well.
Jeff, do you agree with Uncle Freight Train's thoughts? Because as crazy as 2020 is, I'm reminded we can go full Led Zeppelin and turn this up to 17. Uncle Freight Train might be right. He may be a Nostradamus, and this is the thread that just begins to unravel everything. Like every constitutional Christian conservative has prayed for the last 30 years since Reagan left the White House.
Yeah, well, by the way, first of all, I wanted to say I wanted to fit in, so I threw a background of the happiest place on earth behind me. But
nice.
Nice. But yes. But one thing that I wanted to say about this is that what's been interesting is that this has been one of my biggest frustrations with Trump since he came into office was, okay, where is the deep state exposure? Where are the indictments? Where are the arrests? Like, we keep hearing about them. We keep it's almost like he keeps hinting at them, and then they never come. Well, I think especially as we're looking at what's been coming out over the last even couple of weeks, you almost wonder, is Trump playing a game with these guys? Is he letting them kind of like dig their own holes, and then it's just like, here it is for everybody to see? Because, in the beginning, like when you think about it, like all the conservatives were like, okay, like we need to arrest, Hillary, we need to arrest Obama, we need to arrest everybody. Like that would have created an entire civil war had we done that. But literally, we're watching this unravel before our eyes with somebody like Joe Biden, with somebody like this unmasking of General Flynn, with all of these different things. We're getting to the point to where there's not going to be any room to refute the accusations against these guys. I mean, when you think about it, Trump has to be probably the most patient man in the entire world to go through all that he's gone through over the last several years. And then all of a sudden now it's like, it's all out there for everybody to see. Like literally at a certain point, you're just looking at the mainstream media and these politicians and Joe Biden and even Hillary now and all that kind of stuff. And you're just looking at what they're saying, and you're just thinking like, they're still just deny. This is going to implode before their eyes. I mean, I can't see anything else besides people start to get arrested.
JJ, do you think that? Let me ask you this: do you get the sense? Spiritually, before I get your analysis of what's going on the ground, do you get the sense spiritually, personally, in your gut, that we're on the precipice of something monumental, that this age of madness culminates with wickedness in the high places being exposed?
Well, there's no real simple answer to that, but I guess, yeah, basically, I think that'll be a part of it. I've said, I think that, maybe it's my Jeremiah moment. I think if you don't start getting into church and standing up for your rights, that your country is going to go one of two ways. If you do that, you can come back stronger, and a lot of these people in the high places are going to get arrested. It's going to be like when they busted the drug ring in New York back in the Frank Lucas days. Like 2/3 of the police or something like that in New York were in on the crime. All of them got arrested. Huge shakeup. It's going to be that times a million. Or you're not going to do anything. You're going to just follow orders. You're just going to follow the ram off the side of the cliff during a storm with the rest of the sheep, and your country's going to break up. It's going to balkanize. It's going to be a level of uncertainty and change. Change can happen. Well, that level of change will be devastating. So my short answer is yes. My long answer is it's going one of two ways. And they're both way different than what they've been.
I hope that it's the case that we're going to see a lot of wickedness exposed. But if it happens, if the Lord's merciful and it happens, it's going to destroy public trust in the institutions, and it's going to destroy both political parties, gentlemen. Because I believe that there is enough corruption on both sides that then that tyrant of the hour will come before the people and say, all these guys are turds. And I can take care of them for you. And when that happens, then that's something to watch out for, because I think there's a culmination that's coming. We can't go full 88 miles an hour and not have the DeLorean hit hyper mode. We're going to go back to the future. Eventually, this is going to culminate somewhere. And I look forward to seeing it happen. But it's obviously not going to happen with our pastors holding people accountable and actually opening up their pulpits, as I've been saying, because we're finding that when it comes to scrotlessness in pulpits and in politics, there's a lot of mene, tekel parson, weighed, measured, and found wanting. I need a scrot check on aisle 4. Scrot check on aisle 4. I still wait to find it, but in your backyard, Jeff, 500 pastors, they said they're not going to take Governor Newsom's orders starting May 31st. They're going to defy the governor's edicts, and they're going to start having churches. So we talked about it in a previous podcast. I think it's fantastic, but I never thought that it would be California that would be leading the way spiritually, that there would be a remnant that would emanate from the People's Republic of your great state.
Well, let me just say this. I believe that I read an article saying that there was actually 3,000 churches that were going to.
Yeah.
Yes. Now the other side of it is that I don't think that California is as blue as our reputation says. And one of the reasons is because we're beginning to see a lot of these representative races. They're flipping, they're going red. I've been talking to different people that have been running for Congress, and they're like, no, we may be able to take back California. There's even some talk of California
Jeff,
actually going red.
Is this breaking news? Breaking news. This California could go red for the first time since 1988.
Well, let me put this out there. Let me put this out there. Think about this. 1 million registered voters were taken off of the lists here in California for fraudulent voting. So when you think about it, that's literally 1 million people were casting ballots that were dead, not a registered voter, not living in the state of California. 1 million. That is a crap ton. So when you think about it, the races may have been much closer. Gavin Newsom may not have even been duly elected. We have no idea what this actually comes down to when we start cracking down on voter fraud. That's the one good thing about Trump. He's been cracking down on voter fraud. I'm hoping that he can really keep things in balance, especially now that we're going to this full-on voting by mail. I mean, that is the Democrats' way of still holding on to power. But if this was a true 100% election where, people actually had to show an ID, show up to vote, that sort of thing, I wouldn't be surprised if California was much closer to a red state than originally thought.
Let me say this to people who are watching, because a lot of people who, before I get to JJ, and then I'll get to Uncle Freight Train about this, two thoughts. One, to piggyback on your point about there might be a red sea in California that is swelling. Katie Hill, I think it was the 25th congressional district, correct?
Yep.
In California, Katie Hill, who had to resign because she had a throuple. What does that mean? A three-way couple. So she was married, and then she was cheating on her husband with her lesbian congressional aide, and didn't tell her husband in the throuple that she was getting her. I won't go there. She was just partaking in fruits that were unbiblical. The thing is that she had to resign, and that district went for Clinton by 7 points in 2016. A Republican just won that district less than 48 hours ago by 20 points. That is huge. That is huge. And the thing is that the same thing happened in Wisconsin. Another special congressional district that Democrats were expected to take over. Trump won it by 20 points. The Republican won it by 16. They're like, oh, Trump slipped. Like, 4 points in a red district ain't much.
Well, so, and let me just say this too about, like, because I've been following these primaries and elections and all that kind of stuff out here in California. When you look at the Republican numbers in this primary that just happened, there was, I believe it was like 2.4 or 2.8 million votes that were cast for Donald Trump in an uncontested primary election. That's the most votes cast in a Republican primary since 2008. Think about that. If this is the first time that we've had a primary election without fake people listed on our voter rolls. I mean, the thing is that this may be the turning point of we're actually keeping the state in check. Again, we may be closer to a red state than originally thought if we can take out all of the voter fraud.
Now, the second point that I want to make is you said voter ID. There are liberals that believe that voter ID disenfranchises people from being able to vote. It only disenfranchises people that are here illegally. It only disenfranchises people that shouldn't be voting in the first place, like your dead grandma or your late aunt who wasn't taken off the voter rolls for years. And I'm looking at you in Illinois, JJ, because we know that when it comes to rampant voter fraud with dead people, it started in the 60s in Chicago. But that's Richard Daley.
Thank you, Richard M. Daley.
Yeah, Richard Daley, one of the most corrupt politicians ever in American history. But it doesn't disenfranchise people. Well, people can't afford to get a driver's license. You can get a free state-issued ID that isn't a driver's license, that has your own ID number that verifies who you are for free in every state. It's a non-driver's license ID. I could have gotten one in Iowa. I could get one here in New Jersey. I could have gotten one in Oklahoma, Missouri, Indiana. And they will issue it to you for free.
I have to blow back on you. It's not free in every state. That ID, it's $4 in Illinois.
Okay, so you can afford a pack of smokes, but you can't afford a $4 ID.
I'm just letting you know, making sure, keeping everybody honest.
Okay, I'm keeping them honest too. Keeping them honest too. If you can afford a Big Mac and you can afford your $50 or $100 cell phone plan and your $1,000 iPhone, you can go down to the DMV and get a $4 ID. Now,
Well, they require health insurance. Why don't they just require an ID? When you graduate from high school, they give everybody a diploma. Guess what? Psh.
Why isn't it mandatory? Exactly, JJ. Why isn't it mandatory to have identification? I understand we're not trying to be Europe and have papers, please, when you cross from state to state, but when you vote,
Right. When
you have
vote,
to have some identification.
when you
Why
vote,
would you not? The most important thing you can do with your citizenship is vote, and they're treating it like a pay toilet. It's ridiculous.
and after that is juries. A lot of them, they base the juries off of driver's license pools. They're switching over to lottery systems because there's more people to pull from than from the driver's license pool.
How surprising.
So what?
Well, let's also back up a second. So we're looking at voter ID to vote, right? The Democrats tell us that's racist, right? Well, number one, let's actually look at the actual stats. There's more people in poverty of the Caucasian. I hate calling it a race, but people with light skin. There's more people in poverty that are white than there are any other minority. So that's number one. Number two, in the state of Washington, because of all this contact tracing stuff that's going on, they're now requiring IDs to order food at a restaurant. So now, is it racist to require ID to get food in a liberal state like Washington? Because it's got to be one or the other. It's either, if it's racist to have an ID for voting, it's got to be racist to have an ID to eat.
And also, while the COVID's going on, to bring it back to modern day, what's going on, there are more Latinos and blacks dying than whites because they're just being, that one nurse, she gave a video. She's just like, they just don't care. If it's a white person, they do. And that's in New York.
right. Uncle
So I'm
FreightTrain.
just like, where's the racism?
Well, my question is, and I want to tag along with Jeff here and see what he thinks. Where in the world, and I know their narrative is racism. How is any of this racist at all? To ask for a human being living in this country to please present an ID so you can go cast your ballot, what does that have to do with race at all, Jeff? I don't get it. Help me out with this.
It's racist to be making the claim that it's racist because it's the idea that people that are a minority cannot afford a $4 ID. It's this racist idea of low expectations. They're not good enough to afford it, so we have to give it to them. That's
exactly right.
Racism.
That's exactly right.
They've got enough money to go buy 6 or 7 or 8 Social Security numbers. Just pick one and go. Come on. It's beyond me.
Well, those would be those of the Latino persuasion that are here undocumented. We would call them illegal, but they do the jobs we're told that Americans aren't willing to do. I say, no, Americans are willing to do those jobs, especially when you have 36 million unemployed announced Thursday, another 3.2 million put on the doles. We're up to 36 million unemployed since this pandemic pagan panic porn began. Unbelievable. But they're not willing to do the jobs that America, we're not willing to do those jobs. No, we're just not willing to do those jobs, gentlemen, for the price point you want to pay.
We're not legally allowed to do those jobs for the price point that they pay illegals. That's the key, is because of the minimum wage, we are not legally allowed to. So thus the competition, again, capitalism, competition, we are being hindered from being able to take a job that maybe somebody would be willing to take for $7 an hour. I don't know what people are willing to, work in the fields for, that sort of thing, but you can't have this system set up and claim that, they're willing to do jobs that we're not willing to do. No, we're not. We're legally not allowed to do those jobs for that price. Like, legally, we would get arrested and go to jail.
Well, I've said it before. It's a legal form of backdoor slavery. You bring people in here that are unskilled, low-wage labor, and you use them to work the fields, you might as well just call these crony corporatists that use this for cheap labor in the Republican Party and cheap votes in the Democrat Party. You might as well say that they're working on political plantations and that those politicians are their masses. It's absolutely appalling. It's absolutely racist. It's absolutely demeaning. It's spitting upon the Imago Dei, that man is made in the image of God, that man is worth his wages. And it demeans everything when it comes to treating people with dignity and respect. It dehumanizes individuals to use them in this type of means. That's why I think it's absolutely appalling. It's not because I don't want people to come here. I want you to come here legally, and I want you to partake in the fruits of liberty, to be able to work by the sweat of your brow and make money from by the fruits of your labor. But when you're treated this way by politicians and corporations, and you're just seen as backdoor slaves, that is appalling. And I do not believe that God can withstand that. JJ, your thoughts on this?
Once again, no pressure. The thing here is you've got voting. An ID is really simple. It's either free or inexpensive. It should just be free, period. Should be mandatory. One of the few things I'll get behind being mandatory. It should be counted, and your vote should be counted on paper in the public eye, by the way. The illegals coming over are backdoor slavery, right along with for-profit prisons being an absolutely morally important thing. And they make the prisoners make 100% of license plates and ammunition for our military, as well as all of our military's protective gear. So you're using people that are being punished to protect the people that are supposed to protect you? You don't think they don't slack off a little? And on top of that, there's now an invested reason to keep them in prison. You know, and this is where we are as a nation. It's sort of like we're imprisoning ourselves in a system that is beholden to one of two parties, and both of them are becoming prisoners to their own principalities and powers of the air. And I'm telling you, if you don't take it back your country and get to church and start seeing the truth of this, you're going to wish you could go back to 2019, because 2021 is going to hurt a lot.
Let me ask this final question on this topic, gentlemen. JJ brought this idea up, and it just happened to cross my mind just now. Non-violent offenders that are in prison, would you be for a work release, being able to work off your debt to society, by having those people work the fields and do some of this labor that they're saying that Americans aren't willing to do, and it's low wage work? Because I think that's a way that you cut off illegal immigration. You still keep low wages, but the thing is that these people have committed unlawful acts. So in order for them to pay their debt back to society and earn their way back into an honest living, they would then work these jobs. Would that be an idea that you guys would endorse? I'll start with Uncle FreightTrain.
Monetizing their time, John, and putting that towards labor, I don't see why that's a bad idea. We have them come out and clean up road ditches. We have them come up and clean up parks. The work release concept with the armed guards and the whole 9 yards. No, I'd say it's a wonderful idea. I say rock and roll with that one. Why not?
Jeff,
it's certainly
your
not
thoughts?
going to hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, my only thing is that if we could just fix this issue of illegal immigration and then actually make it to where it's an even playing field, I think you would have a lot more Americans that didn't break the law be willing to do a lot of those kinds of jobs. And so for me, I don't necessarily think that should necessarily be like our solution or our answer. But I will say this too. I know somebody that went to prison in the state of Washington, and they were allowed to leave prison, go to work, they come back and sleep and that sort of thing. But they actually had a bill to pay back their time in prison, basically room and board after a period of time. And he was able to, with good behavior, be able to go outside of the prison, go work. He was working in a call center, went back, and that was his way of paying that off. Otherwise, when you get out, you get hit with a $20,000 bill for room and board over the time when you're there. I'm all for that kind of a thing. Just when it comes to like a lot of these kinds of things, again, it comes back to this idea of low expectations. And again, if we could even the playing field, if we're going to have a minimum wage, let's actually enforce having a minimum wage. And I think that more Americans would actually be filling a lot of those jobs as opposed to being undercut by illegals who are willing to do it for half of what minimum wage is.
JJ, your thoughts on this topic?
They're short and sweet. I like your idea of the nonviolent offenders. I mean, even the violent offenders, they used to have chain gangs and whatever. If they're under an armed guard, if they get good behavior and actually repent of what they did and admit they're guilty or whatever, put them on the list, at the back of it. But I also understand where Jeff's coming from. I knew a gentleman that went to prison. I know a lot of people who went to prison. But this particular individual, he did the halfway house program, and that all reduces the cost on the taxpayer, and it also keeps them under a monitored eye longer than actually just most of them would just go serve their time and get out. They actually tend to integrate back in better, become a productive member of society with better results than, all right, you served your time, out you go, two twinks, right, back to the street.
And I also grew up in Arizona with Sheriff Joe Arpaio. Gotta say, like chain gangs, pink underwear, wore the striped, full on, striped uniforms. Tent city. They would literally take them out into the desert. They'd be sleeping in tents. They would have green eggs and ham for breakfast every morning. Like he had a budget of I think it was like $1 a day that he'd spend on their food and that sort of thing. They ate. It wasn't the most tasty meal, but the thing is that it was cutting down the cost, and they went out and they were actually serving time. It wasn't let's go work out and hang out and go to school.
I think Uncle FreightTrain.
Oh, that's fine, John. I just wanted to throw this out to the group. We've talked about this privately, you and I. I want to throw this out to the other two gentlemen as well. Since 1974, we've aborted more than 600,000 babies. Do you assume
60 million?
How many?
60 million babies. 1973.
Oh, well, pardon me. 60 million. My figure was off. Apparently, I don't know what I was thinking of. But anyway, with that premise, and now we have to bring in labor to fill these jobs that the white man won't do. Well, you know why the white man won't do it? Because there aren't enough white men anymore to take it up the slack because you killed them all.
I'm JJ Knight, and I approve this message.
Jeff, your thoughts on that? Because that was an idea that originally was given to me by my mother when I was in college about 18 years ago.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of factors at play. I would definitely say abortion's one of them. The other side of it is that there has been a strategic push by the left within the education system to really push for the STEM jobs and go into school for like science, math, technology, like all that kind of stuff. But when you think about it, everybody's going to school for those. There's not enough jobs for all those people. And then all of a sudden now nobody's trained to do any of these other jobs. And we're taught here in America, those jobs are beneath you. You need to be a scientist. You need to be an astronaut. You need to pursue your dreams over here in these big, tech jobs up in Silicon Valley and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's not enough of those jobs to go around. And then all of a sudden nobody wants to settle for any of these just like labor jobs or anything along those lines. So that's a contributing factor as well. It's like they're pushing us down this direction to create the space for the illegal immigrants to come in, fill that void, and then you say, well, nobody's trained, nobody wants to do that kind of stuff. Maybe it's because we've been trained since we were in kindergarten that we want to work in Silicon Valley. And again, there's a lot of issues that all relate to a lot of this kind of stuff, but part of it, I think, is also the education system as well.
I would agree. I would agree. From my personal experience, I'm not going to mention who I work for, but I'm not a type of person that I can sit in a cubicle, sit at a desk. I have to move, and luckily, me and the Amen Corner over here, we've paid off over $50,000 worth of debt since we got married. So the job that I want to do, even though I'm college educated, I can do because it pays a fair and living wage, which we won't go down that rabbit trail, but it pays a fair and living wage, and it's something that I enjoy. And I think that you could walk and chew gum at the same time as we finish up this rabbit trail we went down. I think that you could do both. You could close the borders, and you could also then tell these Chamber of Commerce Republicans and say, well, what are we going to do? We don't have the cheap labor. Okay, well, we can still allow for legal immigration to occur if we bring about immigration reform that allows people to be able to afford to come to America more easily. But at the same time, when it happens to occur that we need people to work these jobs because you want to keep the cost of food low, then we have a solution that we could help these people be able to rehabilitate themselves and become productive members of society. And that could lead to them then working a job for minimum wage at those jobs, like you said before, because they automatically know the craft and they don't really have other options because they have a record. So I digress on those 2 points, but I think that would be something that would be interesting moving forward. The next topic that I wanted to get to was the fact that the Wisconsin Supreme Court struck down Governor Tony Evers' unconstitutional edict by a 4-3 decision yesterday, and within 30 minutes, restaurants were open, bars were open, retail stores were open. Americans took their country back. But it took, by a one-person vote, a 4-3 decision at the Wisconsin Supreme Court to uphold the rule of law. And sadly, one of the 3 that voted against that was appointed by Republican Governor Scott Walker. But I think it was absolutely tremendous. But this idea that we go to the courts in order for them to decide our way of life, this is not how the founders intended it. This is not what we have, we were founded and based upon. In fact, if you read the Federalist Papers, me and JJ have had this conversation privately. When you read the Federalist Papers, we don't have 3 co-equal branches of government. The Federalist Papers said that the weakest of the 3 branches was the judicial. And us turning to the judicial to do stare decisis, which is basing our laws on precedent, we've done that since 1890. But the thing is that doing that's not what our founders intended. And now that we're going to the courts and saying, oh, we're going to sue the Michigan governor. No, you know what? Tell those Michigan Republican lawmakers should tell the governor to pound sand and be fomenting these people to say, don't bring your guns to the Capitol, but you need to march on Lansing each and every day of the week and twice on Sunday until this governor stands down.
I have a question.
Your thoughts?
I have a question. In Michigan, do we know in their constitution, do they have the overturn for veto, the legislature?
I think every legislature has the overturn for veto.
Okay, I didn't know because, like I said, Illinois, they've actually we discussed this ad nauseum. There is an exception in the religious rights part in the Illinois Constitution so that the governor can, in the case of public safety or epidemic health, whatever. And so, like, on Illinois' level, the court's all we've got because the legislature isn't doing nothing. That's why they always go straight to the federal here in Illinois. So we need to have a lot of constitutional reform. We need to have a lot of, we need to have spiritual reform. You need to get in church. You need to get in your local town halls, get involved in your local school boards, get involved, stay informed, and start there. From a mighty tree, you started a mustard seed. So we're not going to get constitutional reform unless you have your butt in your pew and you believe and you praise and then you go to work. Do it.
Jeff, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. I think that, again, our whole system is backwards to a certain degree. And what we need to get back to is the proper roles of government. Like I know in Michigan, I was talking with Jerry Wayne up in Michigan, and one of the things that that they're struggling with up there, and I believe that the legislative branch there is suing the governor because she keeps extending their state of emergency, even though she doesn't have the authority to. And so basically she's getting away on a technicality of, it's like she's allowing it to expire, and then as soon as it expires, then she re-ups, and almost like on a technicality basis, it's like it's a brand new state of emergency. So in her mind, I'm not extending it, even though she's extending it. You can't just wait until it expires after 28 days, come back on day 29 and like, oh, we're going to re-up it again. And so that's part of the problem that we're having, is they're trying to find loopholes in order to keep control. And then that begs the question, why are they trying to extend this so long? I asked this about Governor Newsom. I asked this about all these governors that keep extending it, even though the data does not support it. And I keep coming back to this idea that they keep, like out here in California, I know this is another rabbit trail, but this is fun.
No, go right ahead.
Out here in California, Gavin Newsom is saying, we're not going to lift these shelter-at-home orders until we have a vaccine and we have herd immunity. So we're looking at 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, something like that. The problem becomes they're really holding out for this vaccine. So then the question logically is, what the heck is in this vaccine that they're all holding out for? Because there's one coming from Israel in 4 weeks that's supposedly going to be available. Democrats don't want that one. They want Bill Gates' vaccine. So what's in Bill Gates' vaccine that they're holding out for so hard? And that's my red flag, is what is actually going on here.
I'll tell you, it's primarily money. Gilead is Fauci is in there so deep it's not even funny. He's clearly like, he may have started off maybe from a good place. I don't know. But he's clearly now like frothing at the mouth with power and money. And he's been in this from the get-go. He helped fund and ordered to help fund. Taxpayer money went to the Wuhan thing on his recommendation. The WHO, China, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation into Gilead, and now they'll make all that money. Whereas in Israel, that school is going to start human testing actually in a few weeks. The human testing will be over in September. But either way, that's a whole 8 months or 10 months ahead of what the Gilead people are saying, and I'm all like, come on. It's all about as you said it on the other day, FreightTrain, it's all about the Benjamins, man.
No doubt.
That's what's in it. There may not be anything wrong with it medically. And I ask questions now. I go, what do you want me to have in there? What is there? And I look up the brands. It's just like the antibody test. 50% of them give false positives. So I told you, John, in private conversation, ask for the brand, ask for the manufacturers, get the info when you go to take it. Still take, an antibody test is drawing out blood. But I'm going to have to take a vaccine, and I told these guys, I'm hoping that I can get on a plane and go to Israel, or I'll even go to Canada or the UK, because they're going to get theirs from another place that's similar timeline to Israel, and I'll take a cowbell and a selfie after I get my shot and bring the paperwork back, because I don't trust them, first of all, and I know they're just bilking us for a crap load of money. Sorry.
FreightTrain?
Off.
Well, first off, gentlemen, they keep talking about this this vaccine, How long has AIDS been in our lives?
Oh, almost
Why isn't there,
over 37 years?
From 1980 is when it first showed up. All right, what about SARS-1? What about the swine flu? What about the bird flu? The bottom line is vaccinating for a virus that can mutate. You might as well be throwing darts at balloons in the dark and hope to God you get lucky, because that's what it amounts to. So if they're waiting for a vaccine, that means they want ultimate control permanently. Now, with that said, I want to get back to what you said about the court decision in Michigan. 4-3?
Wisconsin, but yes.
Did I hear 4-3?
Yes.
What is with these 3 other cats that don't want their state opened up? Who are these dudes or chicks? Who are these people? What is wrong with these people? I tell you what, the judicial system in this country was supposed to be just, okay, you make the laws, you enforce the law, you make the laws, you interpret the laws, and we'll just judge to make sure everybody's following the law. Another hideous and dastardly thing going on in this country is the judicial legislating from the bench. That's the next bailiwick that we have got to nip that in the bud.
Well, that leads us into our next story, because I don't know if you saw this, but the DOJ dropped their charges against General Michael Flynn earlier this week. But the judge in this case is asking for amicus briefs to the court in order to make the argument to continue on with the proceedings. He's literally being the judge, jury, and executioner of charges that aren't being pursued anymore. And this is the first time that anyone has ever seen anything like this. Now there is talk that this could be the first federal judge that is impeached from the bench since the Jefferson administration, which you do have the constitutional authority to do that. It's just nobody has done it before since Jefferson. But I think we probably should have been doing this every freaking year. These are not unelected 1-man or 7-man or 9-man black-robed constitutional oligarchs. They don't get to be their own constitutional conventions and make law from the bench. They interpret the law and give an opinion. The executive branch executes the law. The legislative branch makes the law. And the judicial branch upholds the law and interprets an opinion based on that single case. Not that case law, it means that, it's widely interpreted. And why do we know that that's the case? Because after the Colorado baker was taken to the court, the Supreme Court, and sued, well, they said it was a narrow decision. So there's broad decisions and narrow decisions? No, every decision was supposed to be based for that particular case. That's what the Federalists wrote in the Federalist Papers. That's what they intended. Judges were not allowed to make law from the bench. The only constitutionally prescribed body for the making of laws in this country is the U.S. Congress. It's the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, and the president signs it into law. These judges, like this federal judge that's trying to execute something that he knows is dead on arrival, he's doing this because it's a Hail Mary shot from the last vestiges, I believe, of the deep state to try and take down Flynn and Trump. And what is he doing? He's trying to make Trump pardon Flynn before this goes forward. And then it can be used against him in the campaign. I don't know how this stands, gentlemen, but I think it's absolutely wicked. Uncle Freight Train, your thoughts on what's going on when we found out that this judge is doing this to General Flynn?
Yeah, I'm almost speechless on this one, John. I mean, when your DOJ says, "Hey, there's no case here. It was all set up," and it's clearly evident to even the most casual observer, and doesn't even have to be educated. If they can understand words that they hear, this is ludicrous. It's over. What are you doing? I keep going back to what are they doing? It's almost unfathomable what's going on in this country. I've never seen anything like it in my born days. And I think your analogy of the last ditch effort to get old Donnie and General Flynn, I think you're spot on there.
Before I get to Jeff and then JJ, Adam Housley tweeted this morning. He said, "What we're watching now is a chess match amongst powers that are on a different board than the rest of us. The Flynn judge's maneuver today is one example. Draw that out and keep him away. Meantime, the other side is going to say, more declassifications are coming. This is a bluffing match now. People are at the card table, and they're just racking them and stacking them. Okay, you're going to go all in. I'm going to go all in. To which, gentlemen, this is what I say to all of that.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.
I look forward to seeing these people burn each other down, because if they're going after each other, then they can leave the rest of us the hell alone. Jeff, you're...
Amen.
Now, could it be that let's call them what the deep state, could it be that they're all denying, even though they know that they're going to get caught, but their only shot at not getting caught is holding on until this next election and praying that they can fraudulently beat Trump in the election? Like that's their only hope. And so they realize that they're literally holding on to the edge of the cliff, like you see in all the movies. Their fingers are barely holding on, and they realize, if I can just hold on until November, then maybe I've got a shot at not getting exposed. And so from my perspective, I'm looking at this and you're like, okay, you're caught in the lies. We all see it. It's like right there in the documentation. It's clear. But they're pulling every stop that they can just to get by till the election and pray that whoever's going to be the Democratic nominee is going to beat Trump, more than likely not Joe Biden. But that's what's happening here. They're just holding on as long as they possibly can, praying that they can beat Trump in the election.
JJ, your thoughts on this, and then I have a question to go with the roundtable.
Well, it's really sad. I think that there's going to be just a massive upheaval in both parties. I think there needs to be. You say you guys call it the deep state. I'm just going to call it total depravity.
Nice.
And I think there's a vested. There's no term limits. There's no upper age limits. We've got lower age limits. Let's at least put an upper age limit, 70.
Oh, amen.
That'll at least create some kind of limit. And it's like he said. What did he say? They're playing chess on a different board than the rest of us.
Right.
Yeah, that's called powers and principalities and the power of the air.
Ooh.
That's what that is. This is spiritual warfare playing out on the political field. As long as you have two parties, and you want to talk about constitutional originality, point to the parties in the Constitution. They're not there. George Washington, after he quit, the only, I think, open letter he wrote back to the Congress, to the people, was when the parties were forming under Jefferson, I believe. If he said, "A house divided cannot long stand." Who was he quoting? He was quoting Jesus, our Lord and Savior, from Scripture, talking about demons, because demons don't fight against each other. How can a house divided long stand? He's saying demons do it better than our Congress. And the judges, sad to say, I agree with you guys, but the judges are becoming, because the police, the vast majority of them are just going along with whatever they're told, and the National Guard out in New Mexico and here in Illinois. The judges are being our last line of defense, and that'll only hold so long, because then someone will go, wait, they don't actually have that power. But if we don't get things turned around before that realization happens, the total depravity is going to rock you, man.
So, gentlemen, let me ask you this question as we finish up this point. If the election were to be held today, who wins, Joe Biden or Donald Trump? I'll start with Uncle FreightTrain.
As I predicted before in this podcast, John, I will say it again. Donald Trump will win hands down, will take 90% electoral college, and will be a landslide like you have never seen. Far, far, far outweighing what Ronald Reagan did. This country is sick and tired of this talking out of both sides of your mouth, the double standard and the corruption in both the parties. They know there's only been one man in history for quite some time, at least in my lifetime, other than JFK, because I think JFK, believe it or not, looks more like a Republican conservative than the Democrats today, or than the Republicans today. Anyway, was going after the corruption. But Trump is going after the corruption. Once everybody's eyes are open and they are awakened and they see, as like Flynn's coming down, these people get indicted and they start going to trial, then they maybe start going to jail. The scabs will come off their eyes. They'll understand this is the man that can lead us into prosperity. It will be Donald Trump elected.
Jeff, your thoughts?
Oh yeah, hands down Trump. Like, I've heard some people say that they think he could win all 50 states. Don't know if he would, but I think at where we're standing right now, number one, you compare Joe Biden with Donald Trump. I mean, I don't know of anybody who would feel comfortable with Joe Biden who can't even remember what he did 3 seconds ago as being president. But I think also the other side of it is that talking to people on the left about Trump, what's been fascinating about it is the majority of them agree with what Trump is doing right now. They just don't like his tone. They don't like that he's mean to reporters. They don't like that he's quote unquote divisive or says nasty things. But for the most part, they agree with what he's doing. So then you have the Democratic Party that's saying, no, he's wrong, he's racist, he's whatever it is. I think people are going to be like, but I agree with what he's doing. I just wish he'd lighten up a little bit, maybe not tweet so much. Honestly, I don't see any chance of the Democratic Party beating him minus blatant fraud, which I have a feeling that Trump would actually catch them on because he's in charge right now.
JJ, your thoughts on where the election would stand today?
I would live in a slightly different world than you guys, but based on what I've seen, it's going to actually be so close that it's a hair's width. Based on the people I talk to and the things I've seen, and I've got a few behind-the-scenes things here in Illinois land, and I honestly think, and you've mentioned this outright before in the podcast, I think unless we right the ship and start in our local communities, I think civil war, if I'm being honest with you.
Hey, I've been calling for out here in Orange County. I've been calling for declaring independence from California. So I mean, at that point,
that's what I'm saying. I'm like, it's going to be like not two sides. It's going to be several sides, but it's a lot closer, at least from where I'm standing and the people I talk to and the feeling I'm getting. It's still very, very close because I think the people they can't. Choose this day whom you will serve, and most people couldn't choose this day where to wipe their butt.
It's true. Well,
it
is true.
It's like they want somebody. It's why we're going to the judges. They want somebody else to make the hard decision, but they always want it to side with what they want, but they don't know what they want. And so I think it's going to be super duper close. And I seriously, I mean, I pray not, but I suspect serious upheaval and change.
I think upheaval and change is coming, but if I were to make the prediction, and I had said in a previous podcast with Jeff that Trump had lost my vote, I do believe, though, that Trump would win today, and I don't think that it would be close. And that's not me looking at it with MAGA eyes or Republican eyes. If I'm looking at what has happened since he came down the escalator in 2015, the left overplays their hand, the Teflon Don, nothing sticks, and they're overplaying their hand. And just like Jeff was talking about earlier in California, you tick off enough people, and this goes along with Jeff and JJ's point. There's enough people that are mind-numbed lemmings, as JJ said, that they just go along. But when you impact their freedom of movement and their livelihood, well, then they're like, well, you're screwing me. Okay, I don't want to vote for these people. And that goes to Jeff's point, where Jeff said, well, if we take these people off the voter rolls and we have more of a clean election, well, then that converges. So then you have people that want to go back to work, and you have people that they're like, well, I didn't really give a gosh darn about this, but these guys screwed me. Well, they may say, well, they may not believe the media that says, well, Trump tried to take your jobs away. Well, no, in these states, it wasn't Trump taking my job away. It was these Democrat governors, and I don't really want to have these people in power because I'm not a Christian, but I don't think that you should be banned from going to church if we're going to keep the grocery stores open. I think that there's a convergence somewhere in the middle, and I think it's going to be interesting to play out, because if you would have told me this 3 weeks ago, I would have said Donald Trump loses. But when you put Joe Biden or anybody else against Donald Trump now, and these Democrat governors continue to double down and triple down on the pagan panic porn, I think it's playing into his hand. And what usually happens throughout the years, Democrats overplay their hand, and then the Republicans, they don't do anything. They just sit back, wait for the Democrats to overplay their hand, and then the Republicans are like, hey, we have power again. And I think that that's what's going to happen in 2020. Speaking of Republicans that that just sit back and let the Democrats make these bad decisions, Maryland's Republican governor says he will rescind his state's stay-at-home order effective Friday, May 15th at 5 p.m. Why did Maryland's Republican governor have a stay-at-home order to begin with? Same for the Ohio Republican governor, the Florida Republican governor, the Texas Republican governor. Basically, the shutting down non-essential businesses by the Iowa Republican governor, which was effectively a stay-at-home order by fiat. I thought that the Democrats did this stuff. Why did Republicans buy into this? I'm going to start with JJ.
Well, this is when I go back to my point. It's the powers and principalities at play. The Republican and Democratic parties, knowingly or not, like everything is a reflection of the spiritual warfare, and they've become entities unto themselves, both of them in different ways, pagan, one more progressive than the other, and laying back and waiting is sloth. It's like, you need to, race up against the battlements of hell. You need to siege the gates. Whereas, obviously, going full leftist, everyone may look different on the outside, but your brain needs to be the same on the inside. That's enslavement of the mind and spirit. No, fight against that too. And so what's happening is you're beginning to see that the only difference is now in the newer, especially in the, let's say, our age and younger group of the things is just are they a Democrat or are they Republican? But really it's just they want power. They want to stay in power. And so they saw Dems taking a grab and they grabbed along with it. And I've heard her on earlier podcasts with Jeff. I think a week or two when we didn't know what was going on is one thing. But now we're months into this and the data doesn't share anything and everybody's just continuing to, as you would say, John, double down on the dumb. Yeah, God ain't going to play this for long. 100% of people have said if they extend them out to 6 months, which is what, July? 100% of people were like, nope, screw you. So we're beginning to see that none of the politicians, or the majority of them, they're not in touch with the people anymore. They don't represent us. They just are abusing us.
I would agree. To go along with your point, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell says that almost 40% of households earning less than $40,000 a year lost their jobs in the month of March alone. Jeff, your thoughts as we talk about why did Republicans buy into this pagan panic porn?
Okay, so kind of to go off of a little bit what JJ was saying right here as well is part of the problem is that Republicans no longer have a conservative Christian base as much.
Right.
And we've gone more secular. And part of the problem with that is that if you take away religion and all of a sudden now you have a more progressive atheistic worldview, even though it may be conservative, the problem is that now you no longer understand the necessity of needing a base set of truth. You know, like within Christianity, we have the Bible. That's our source of truth. Within America, we have the Constitution. That's our source of truth. But you take away the religious aspect of it, you no longer have that idea that truth is rooted in the Bible or truth is rooted in the Constitution. There's a correlation there. And so I think you become more pragmatic because you just go along with wherever the wind takes you. And this is, to me, this is an indictment on the fact that as Christians, I think we're failing in our ability to preach the gospel and reach out to the lost. And we need to, if we could actually get out there and preach the gospel, maybe we could actually turn our country around. Think about it. And I've made this point on several other podcasts as well. When's the last time you actually saw a prominent pastor preach the gospel to the lost? Can't remember it. It used to be something that all the big name famous pastors used to do. Nobody does it anymore. They sit around in their little conferences. They talk about the gospel. They bring people over and they write books about the gospel. They put out podcasts about the gospel.
We have gospel coalitions.
Saved.
We have gospel coalitions. We have Together for the Gospel. We have pastors that say, "Oh, we're gospel centered."
Yeah. Maybe if more people got saved, maybe we'd have more people that understand the necessity of having a source of truth. And maybe we could actually have Republicans that actually take a stand and actually rely on the Constitution as opposed to just going with wherever the wind takes them.
Or even better yet, before I get to Uncle Freight Train, maybe you'd have Christians that would say, "I have no king but Jesus," and just because I vote more for the GOD rather than the GOP. So you're going to espouse my principles and you're going to come around to my line of thinking because I don't report to you and I don't want to see it at the table of power, but I'm going to be your Nathan to your David, and I'm going to speak truth to your power and you're going to report to me. So if you don't abide by my principles, you don't get my vote. But that is somewhere we lost that line of thinking, and that was because we sold out our principles and we're not saved, and we don't have a lot of people that have heard the gospel in the country or they've rejected it. But I digress. Freight Train, your thoughts on why did Republicans do this in these states and buy into the pagan panic porn?
You know, John, I'd like to have a snappy little comeback on this one and actually explain why they did. I haven't got a freaking clue. I have no idea. Totally insane.
Isn't it a disappointment, Uncle Freight Train, that those that say that they stand for, they espouse conservative values and free market principles, that they're willing to just sell those out at the drop of a hat whenever someone brings some fake data modeling that was created in a lab 13 years ago, and then this guy comes out and, oh, he loses his job not because of the data modeling, but it was because he was banging his married mistress.
Well, yeah, awesome. I don't want to go down the modeling the model trail because it just I guess I will. The same people that create the data modeling for this CCP virus are the same idiots that could have the data modeling for global warming. Or wasn't it? Oh, the ice age is coming. Oh. No, now it was global warming. Oh, no, it's simply just climate change. Make up your freaking mind.
Yeah.
Are you serious? See, the reason you can't make up your mind is because it's all poppycock. It's all smoke and mirrors.
It's the pagan progressive spirit of the age. And I think that,
Amen.
sadly, we're seeing that progressive mindset, there are unsaved people that deal with total depravity across party lines, gentlemen. And sadly, they have bought in to this mindset of the age. And that's why I think some of these people were duped. And it's sad. What is also sad is some of our podcast listeners will know this. You gentlemen may know this man. But David French, writer for National Review, supposed conservative thinker, who now I believe writes for the Bulwark. He is a staunch never-Trumper, and I was struck by something he said yesterday, where he said, "I'm struck by the extent to which various right-wing patriots," in quotes, both reject shelter in place and reject masks. So what are they doing for the country they say they love? The founders would be stunned at their callous disregard for a pandemic. This coming from the same man who said that transgender storytime hour at your local library is the cost of freedom in America, and yet he claims Christ as his savior.
Tranny time at the library, did I just hear?
Transgender storytime hour at your local library.
Yeah, I thought I heard that.
Yep.
Well, with a man has, how can you even take this guy seriously?
Jeff, your thoughts?
I mean, the guy's been totally discredited. Like I have no ounce of respect for the people that if you claim to be conservative or claim to be on the right, and then you're willing to essentially allow Democrats to come in power, you're no longer a conservative. I mean, it's just simple logic. You can't say I'm for conservative principles, but I'm going to go down this route of never Trump. And I'm not saying you have to be a full-on endorser of Trump, or I mean, I get the people that say, it's a matter of conscience. I'm not going to vote for the guy or whatever it is. But all these never Trumpers, they go so far to the extreme, it seems like, that they would rather see a Democrat in power than Trump be in power.
Bill Kristol, to follow up on your point, Bill Kristol has become a Democrat, and he wants to see Biden in power. Meghan McCain is never Trump, and she said she's going to vote for Joe Biden too.
Yeah, again, it shows their lack of conservatism. They're not really conservatives. They are in name and name alone.
Jeff, to me, it shows a lack of synapses in their gray matter to me.
No, I don't
seriously,
think.
Well, I mean, bottom line, gentlemen, you've got these never Trumpers never quite understood that. Okay, so yeah, he's not Billy Graham or he's not Apostle Paul. He's just a man that has flaws like we all do. Thanks for the love and the grace of God to cleanse us from those flaws. Thank you, Lord. Now, the bottom line is, what's your alternative? Hillary Clinton, the Democratic Communist Party of the United States, the new socialist party of the United States that will take your way of life from you immediately if they get involved, if they get in the power that they want. You think this is crazy under COVID and our civil liberties being abused? Dear God, wait till you see socialism full blown in America.
Yeah,
it will be devastating. So the Never Trumpers, I never understood that, because the alternative is pure sadness and despair.
Well, and think about that point too. Is that think about if we had a Democrat as president, because right now what we're seeing Trump is in office, and he's been shockingly, for like the first time that I can remember, delegating to the states. You know, we've got a wide range of things that are happening across the country. Some we agree with, some we don't agree with. But Trump, as a president, has been like, no, we're going to allow each governor to do it. And in all reality, it's been showing, look at how awful the states are with Democrat-run governors. Look how good the ones with true conservative governors. You can see the difference. It might be somewhat strategic there on his part too. But the thing is that imagine if we had Hillary Clinton as president. What we're seeing in California and New York would have happened on a federal level. That's a whole different ballgame.
You just about gave FreightTrain a heart attack.
I tell you what, I'm not big on scary movies. They really don't do much for me. Ghost stories and Freddy Krueger and whatever the case, maybe zombie movies. They don't scare me. Reality scares me, and it's called Hillary Clinton and the new Democratic Socialist Party of America. That's what scares me.
Once again. Now, JJ, your thoughts on this, because how do you follow up what Jeff and Uncle FreightTrain had to say? I'm at a loss for words, but I'm going to let you try and add your 2 cents.
Thanks. I don't buy into the lesser of two evils argument. We've had this discussion, I don't even know how many times.
Right.
I don't fear either party. I don't fear the pits of hell. I've got the Lord. But you have to go on this with your eyes open, and you have to vote, as Jeff put earlier, your truth of Scripture. I take every candidate against. Is it 1 Timothy and Titus? There's rules in there. And you talk about Exodus. There's the basic rules. And, if they don't meet the majority of them, I know they're not going to meet them all. Well, but the majority of them, I don't even give them a second glance. Now, a lot of times that means I show up to vote, my ballot's empty. I showed up, but it's empty, because we're not going to get any change by voting in the same people and same parties over and over again. We just aren't. Now, granted, some change is worse than others, so I'll give you that. And, Hillary Clinton, holy crap. We can, we need more than 20 digits to count how many people close to the Clintons have vanished over the years, and only one has ever been recovered. But, that's just me. I'm not going to tell people who to vote for. I'm going to tell you what to vote by, and that is Scripture. That's what I use, and I recommend you use it too.
JJ, what you need to tell everybody you come in contact with for 2020, you have to get registered and you have to vote, people. That's our goal right now. As a Christian army that wants to take this country back, we have to vote. Now, I don't care if they vote their conscience and vote for somebody other than my candidate. That's perfectly fine. But at least they made the effort. We need people of like mind to vote, gentlemen. This is D-Day personified times 5 billion. We have to vote.
I'm telling you, man.
And if I can just say this too, is that I totally agree with you. Like, I don't buy into the lesser of two evils approach. I buy into the who's more biblical approach. And so, you may come to the same answer as the lesser of two evils, but I just look at it, okay, who's closer? Maybe they're only a step closer to being more biblical, but it's better than being a step further away, is how I look at it.
Right. And we won't get into it here, but John, you and I have had personal discussions on where I disagree with Trump, and it's all faith-based.
Right.
But yeah, for the majority of people, well, for everybody, if you just lived by, if we just followed the good book, how much better would your life be?
Shocker.
Yeah, shocker. Absolute shocker. It's almost like, that wide is the way that leads to destruction, and the way is easy, and many there go that find it. But narrow is the way, and that way is hard, that leads to life, and few there go that find it. It's almost like we had this conversation, I don't know, a week ago, Uncle Freight Train, on last weekend's bonus. We're talking about this very same thing. If people want to check that out, they can. We do a deep dive on that as well. But Jesus spoke about the coronavirus madness in Matthew 6 and 7. We break that down in last weekend's weekend bonus. I want to get to two more sound bites that you guys are going to be able to hear, and then I'm going to go with my final thoughts, and then we'll close up the America Held Hostage podcast. I have a clip here from TV News HQ. John Brennan on CNN interviewing James Clapper. And Clapper admitted he didn't find evidence of Russian collusion. Then he was asked about leaking to the press, and his video connection died. You guys have to hear this.
Okay, so asking for names, nothing wrong with that. Unmasking in and of itself, nothing wrong with that. Leaking classified information, and by definition, these phone calls were classified, that's a problem, correct?
Absolutely, it is.
And if anyone did leak the contents of these conversations, with or without the name, that would be a problem, yes? We've lost the shot. I wonder if we can at least get him on the phone to finish.
Kid you not, that happened. Now, if that isn't God just dunking on pagan progressives and trolling them, I don't know what is, but I think it was absolutely tremendous. Because the irony there is just, it's sweeter than honey. It just is. Anybody have any thoughts on that clip?
My thought would be, thank you, Jesus.
JJ giving a thumbs up here. I'm getting a thumbs up from the Amen Corner. Jeff?
I concur. I mean, this is one of those things where, again, the left is holding on by like fingernails right now. And I think they can't even keep their lies straight. And so I think that we're literally getting to this point to where they're just like, they're trapped in a corner. They know they're caught. Quick, pull the plug. That's all there is to say.
Yeah.
And when it comes to pulling a plug from CNN, you know that is just, oh yeah, everything's collapsing. Shut it down. Shut it down. You know that's what was happening behind the scenes with Jeff Zucker. Just full-blown panic. Now, I do want to say, we do have a clip here from PragerU. PragerU put up this clip of what I now consider America's Batman, Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, who is, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he had this to say about Americans giving up their liberty so easily.
In general, I think that's like we should be concerned about anything that's a massive infringement on our civil liberties.
Yes.
You know, so it's like you got to put a lot of weight on that. A lot of people died to win independence for the country and fight for the democracy that we have, and we should treasure that and not give up our liberties too easily. I think we probably did that actually.
But if you didn't hear that, he said, we probably did that. I think that was absolutely outstanding. And JJ, you have said before this man had to live through some of this because he's an immigrant. Share those thoughts.
All right. So for those of you listening who don't know, Elon Musk grew up in the country of South Africa. When he was young, there was an organization and a system of governing called apartheid, where a white minority seized power after the European imperialists left. You know, they decolonized after the World War scenarios, and they were extremely racist. They put into power. I mean, blacks were beneath them. Blacks and whites couldn't walk on the same side of the streets. Trevor Noah was an illegal birth because his mother was black, his father was white. Now, Elon Musk was white there, but he was still a child growing up seeing this evil. And apartheid was overthrown in the 90s, I think, late 90s. And so he knows what he's talking about when fighting for freedom and liberty. And he's seeing his country now being dominated predominantly by its black majority, but now they're having corruption and are turning on each other and fighting for power, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, he's a rich eccentric, and he named his kids some weird combination of letters or whatever. Take it with a grain of salt, but he's on the money here. He can speak with authority on this subject. He lived it. He came to America in the American dream, legally, built his way up. He's now a billionaire on his way to multi-billionaire. Yeah, he's an eccentric, but he's not wrong on this.
Jeff, your thoughts on America's Batman, Elon Musk, sounding basically ringing the Liberty Bell?
I mean, here's the thing about Elon Musk. On one hand, he is the epitome of the American dream. He is like the defining person that we should all be ascribing to be in the sense of go out, think up of crazy, wacky ideas and figure out how to make money off of it. That's ultimately what we're supposed to be doing here in America. I have some concerns with him. I mean, when you're talking about drilling a hole in people's skull and implanting chips that throw things, and he's talking about actually full on essentially brain transplants that are replaced by AI, and then you can essentially live forever. That's a little scary. But let's throw that to the side. He's spot on when it comes to this kind of a thing, and we need more people that have prominent power and deciding factor to actually, go forward with this. I really respected the guy for saying, we're going back to work. I'm going to be on the floor. Arrest me. That's what we need, more leadership. We need actual leaders. He showed he's actually a leader.
Uncle Freight Train, your thoughts?
Going to piggyback on Jeff right there. Yeah. Where were all the CEOs of these major corporations during this whole lockdown period? Only Musk comes up with, I don't think so. This man's more of a patriot for his workers and being a foreign man than some of the people born on this soil. I was very impressed with Elon Musk. Yes. But I still pose the question, where were all the other CEOs? Silence, crickets, heard nothing from anybody. He's the only one with the voice out there, except for a few straggling individuals that have been defying their states. Amazing to me.
Well, what happened to all the what happened to all the CEOs though? As soon as coronavirus came, they all retired. They all quit. They all up and left. Look at Bob Iger. Look at a lot of the big major corporations. As soon as coronavirus came around, they split.
They didn't want to deal with it. The only one who has sort of redeemed himself is Iger. He came back, he was in the process of leaving. They're like, we can't do this without you right now. And he's like, okay. So he's the only one, a little bit of, Disney is, but yeah, they all were like, yeah, we don't want to deal with this. Peace out. And again, it goes back to that insider trading type thing. They were getting info and were seeing the things on, and they've got the money and the people to monitor everything, so they can screw over the little guy, buy out their stock, and go off and eat their ice cream in their ivory tower.
Well, they were buying into the models that were the predictions. I can see why they wanted to skate, get out of Dodge. I'm not going to be around here with 2.5 million people croaking, 250 million people croaking on me. I'm getting out of here.
Who's the one that went to his own island with his family? There was one of those CEOs just see ya, and he has a private island. Just
amazing.
A lot of ballless wonders, my friend. I need a scrote check on aisle 4. scrote check on aisle 4. And the thing is that sadly, it's not just happening in Washington, D.C., it's happening in Wall Street. Because when we freaked out over some bat guano, there were a lot of people that went missing as this occurred. We battened down the hatches. And I'm with you, JJ. First couple weeks, that's fine. But the 15 days to slow the spread and then 30 days to flatten the curve. The Amen Corner and I over here, we were absolutely appalled after 15 days to know that this was going to continue for another 30 nationwide. And I thought, what kind of carnage is there going to be after this? And now this is May 14th as we record this. It's May 15th when you listen to this. We're day, I don't know what day.
I believe it's either 59 or 60. Day number 1 was my birthday.
It's day number 61 here in New Jersey of America held hostage in quarantine. So that's 2 months and a day. And that leads me to my final thoughts on the way it should be commentary. Saw this tweet by show contributor and show editor Todd Erzin of the Steve Deace Show. He tweeted this out earlier today. It's a quote by G.K. Chesterton. Idolatry is committed not merely by setting up false gods, but also by setting up false devils, by making men afraid of war or alcohol or economic law or, dare I say, bat guano, when they should be afraid of spiritual corruption and cowardice. And Todd Erzin said, how many Christian conservatives have failed this test in the last 2 months? Too many to mention, gentlemen. Too many to mention. And I'll keep you posted on how my meeting with my pastors is going to go Saturday. But that's going to be interesting in and of itself now that our governor has given us the go-ahead starting Monday to have drive-in services. So I'm afraid they're going to wuss out. But everything that I've said in the podcast is stuff that I'm going to say in a loving way, in a spirit-filled way. But I don't think that there's any way that any Christians can say that biblically they made the right decision to huddle in upper rooms afraid of bat guano when we are told not to forsake the assembly and the gathering together. But if you did that based on your own personal conviction, that's one thing. But when you're doing it because you're following Caesar's edicts, then I have a problem. That's the way I see it, and that's the way it should be. Final thoughts, gentlemen, as we close up this third installment of the weekly roundtable of the America Held Hostage podcast. We'll start with JJ this time.
I actually, ironically, have another G.K. Chesterton quote. I've started collecting great quotes because I've got the time. You cannot love a thing without wanting to fight for it. I am sick and tired of hearing, I love my country, I love America, and then you sit down and eat your Cheetos. I'm going to work. I'm taking care of people who can't take care of themselves. I think that's where God wants me to be. I need other people that are sitting there, as you say, obeying an edict from Caesar, just stuffing their face and worrying about where they get their toilet paper to get up off their ace and start fighting for what they love. If you're not fighting for the church, you're not fighting for Christ. If you're not fighting for your country, you're not fighting for for what it was founded on. You're not fighting for yourselves or your loved ones or the people like me who are trying to care for other people who I have to take care of them because they can't take care of themselves. We're all in this together is the thing that they're trying to say, stay home together. No, get up and go out. Praise your Lord. Be smart about it. If you're compromised or whatever, or as John said, you have your own convictions, fine. but don't just follow orders. The Nuremberg defense is bull.
FreightTrain, your thoughts?
Well, to quote song lyrics from the techno pop band of the 80s, Devo, when something's going wrong, you must whip it. When a problem comes along, you must whip it, and whip it good. We need to whip it good right now, gentlemen. Whip up our pulpits, whip up our country, and take it back, America.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.
I didn't know we were going to go full 1980s MTV reference. Yo, 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 MTV raps. But I'll allow it. That was awesome.
So my thing is I wanted to pose a solution to the coronavirus crisis. And this was put forth today by J.D. Rucker, who he's the editor-in-chief over at Knock Report, and he's the co-founder of American Conservative Movement that I'm also the co-founder of. And to me, this is brilliant, right? Coronavirus solution. Number 1, buy Greenland. Number 2, quarantine it. Number 3, offer taxpayer-funded passage and housing, which will be much less than $3 trillion, for anyone who wants to go wait for the cure before going outside. Number 4, let the rest of us get back to work. Herd immunity by fall.
I love that. I love that. And you know what? That is an answer to this coronavirus prayer.
Serenity now!
That is the answer to everything we need. Just right now. Buy Greenland, ship everyone over there, and let's get our way of life back. I absolutely
Well, you know,
gentlemen.
before the virus, Trump even asked if it was for sale, didn't he?
Which is interesting because they're independent, but yeah, he did.
And you know what? We spent $3 trillion. I think they'd probably take that money right about now.
Bingo.
Go buy islands everywhere. Yeah. Canada is actually going to be giving back much of the Northwest Territory. Maybe we can step in there and talk with the Inuit and be like, hey, we got people to come work for you.
Hey, you know what? If Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, they don't want to move in until Trump move into the U.S. until Trump loses his reelect bid, and then they violate that. Or Alec Baldwin wants to move. Rosie O'Donnell, let's ship her too. You're fired. Get to the Northwest Territory or Greenland. I think it's a tremendous idea. It's huge, gentlemen. Absolutely huge.
Exactly.
So, as we close up, gentlemen, this has been once again absolutely tremendous and a great honor and privilege to share the screen and the microphone with you. Jeff, you share your Twitter accounts where people can follow you.
At Jeff the GK on Twitter, Parler, Gab, all the good stuff. And then you can also follow just the network as a whole at the GK online on all the socials.
And you can also find the American Conservative Movement that he's a part of too at AmCon Movement, right?
AmCon Movement, again, on all the socials. And again, we're going to be having another online conference coming up on the 30th. We've already had great speakers for the previous ones, like Greg Locke, Michael Johns, Mindy Robinson. Great lineup. We're in talks with some really, really cool speakers for this next one. So definitely tune in for that.
We'll be playing an ad for that right after this podcast ends. You can follow me on Twitter at jhinton_. Email the podcast at americaheld@gmail.com. For Uncle Freight Train, Jeff Dornik, and JJ Knight, I'm John Hinton. This has been the weekend update, weekly roundtable of the America Held Hostage podcast on the GK Podcast Network. Until next time, that's the way it should be. Colossians 2:8.
Hey, this is Jeff Dornik, co-founder of the American Conservative Movement. Mark your calendars for Saturday, May 30th, as we'll be doing our third edition of the Saving America Conference, which will be streaming live on our Facebook page. Past speakers have included Pastor Greg Locke, Joshua Fierstein, Mindy Robinson, Andy Cyrus, Trevor Loudon, and so many more amazing conservative speakers. We've been averaging about 25,000 viewers per conference, and I hope that you'll join us for this next one. For more information, go to AmericanConservativeMovement.com, and we'll see you for the Saving America Conference on Saturday, May 30th on the ACM Facebook page.